So today I thought that I would do a quick video about tarot. I recently set up a Patreon account and I got my first patron, and I put up a poll saying what content do you want to see, and they chose tarot. And because they are my patron and they pay for the privilege, I thought today I would do a video about tarot for them. So I thought I would do a quick video about tarot tips for beginner tarot readers. If you don't know, I am a semi-professional tarot reader. I read for others on almost a daily basis. If you are interested in getting a tarot read from me, they are available on my Etsy store. I do everything from a 1-card read to a 15-card love read, so check it out if you're interested. But I thought, since we all have to start somewhere, I would give you the tips and tricks that I had to pick up kind of on my own, because I started reading tarot before I knew that it was as popular as it is. My first experience of tarot was when I was about 6 years old, and I found my mum's tarot cards. So this was back before the internet was even an everyday thing. So I thought I would give you the tips and tricks that I've had to use over the years to learn to read tarot intuitively. So I thought I would just give everybody a little bit of help and guidance. Now, when you first start reading tarot, obviously the first thing that you are going to want to do is to buy a tarot deck. There are hundreds, thousands of decks out there, but the one that I recommend to anybody who is fresh and new to tarot would be this one, the Rider-Waite deck. This is the deck that is kind of like the classic deck that everyone references, you see photos of, or you see in films. So this is the deck. You'll probably recognise some of the images in this deck from what you've seen in films and on the media. But this is the deck that I would say at least a good 50% of other tarot decks are based upon. A lot of tarot decks are based upon the imagery and interpretations of this deck. So this is the deck that I would recommend that you start with, because this is the one that's going to make it easier for you to progress from this deck to a more like stylistic deck. Obviously there are other decks that are based on like the Fournier deck and things like that, and if that piques your preference, then that's fine, but just this is the one that I would recommend, because for me personally it's the easiest to interpret when you're a beginner. This is my third Rider-Waite deck because they've all gotten battered over the years, but yeah, this is the one that I recommend you start with. Now, when you have bought your tarot deck, I recommend you do one more thing before you start to read any books or anybody else's thoughts on tarot. I would recommend that you get yourself a notebook. This is just like a £4 notebook from my local supermarket. It's the one that I use to write kind of witchy information in, but it's also the one that I use just for my own personal tarot information. But I would recommend you get yourself a notebook and then sit with your cards and go through and first of all pick out the cards that jump out to you, because that's probably your safest place to start. For me that means decks that are the most colourful and have the most images on and things. Stuff like this doesn't jump out to me. Stuff like this does. So pick a card that really jumps out to you, and then start to think about the images and the symbolism that are on the card. Write everything down in your notebook about each card. Think about what the card means to you, what the symbolism means, and things like that, write down your interpretation first, and then leave the page next to your interpretation blank, because that's going to be used for the interpretations that you'll find in other people's books. But the first thing that I would say to do is to just work on your own interpretations, work with your own intuition, basically. So once you've done that, and you've done that for each of the cards in your deck, I would recommend doing 3, maybe 4 cards a day. You don't have to write a lot, it doesn't need to be a full page, just your general interpretations and a few keywords will do. But once you've done that, I would then recommend buying a book. The book that I recommend to people starting out with tarot is one that I actually spoke about in a previous video. So I would recommend this book or something like it. So this is the Tarot Bible by Sarah Bartlett. The reason that I recommend this book is because not only does it give you generalised information about tarot and the history of tarot and a few different reading examples, the main reason I recommend this book to beginners is because it gives you an image of each card, which a lot of tarot books don't always do with the suits. They'll give you the images for the major arcana, but not for the minor arcana, and this one gives you an image for each of the cards, and it is based upon the Rider-Waite deck. So it will match with the deck that you've bought if you've bought the Rider-Waite deck. Now, what I want you to do once you've bought a book like this is to take your notebook that you've written your interpretations in and find the card to match with the cards in the deck. So, for instance, the Lovers. So we would find the Lovers page in the book, and we would take the Lovers card from our deck, and we then compare the imagery and the symbolism, which is pretty much exactly the same, and we compare our interpretations, our keywords and key phrases, and the interpretation here. We write down a kind of rewriting of what we've got in the book in our notebook next to our own interpretations, and then we can compare the two and work out a general interpretation of the card based on our own intuition and what other people have written. So I would recommend a book like this that has the images of the cards in, and is based upon the same deck that you have bought. There is no point in buying a tarot book that isn't based upon the same deck that you've bought to start with, because you will just confuse yourself. But yeah, so notebook, deck, tarot book. They are your 3 key ingredients to starting tarot, is what I would say. So yeah. Now, once you have written your own interpretations, written the interpretations that you've found in your general tarot guide, what I recommend you now start to do is pull 1 or 2, but I would start with 1 card a day. You can do this in a number of different ways. You can do it in the morning, asking for advice for the day. You can ask a question like, what's my day going to be like? Or you can leave it until the evening and you can draw a card based on how your day has been, and then relate that back to what's actually happened in your day. The way that I do it is draw 1 in the morning for advice, to tell me what my day is going to be like, and then 1 in the evening to kind of give me a little bit more of a deeper interpretation of what's happened in my day. You can do whichever one you like. I personally just like the 2 card method. It works for me more than just 1 card a day in the morning or 1 card a day at night. I like the deeper interpretation. But when you start to do that, I would recommend, and this is a high recommendation, is to record your pulls. So you can do this simply just by creating a grid. So this is mine for December. I've just got 4 colours across the top, 4 cups, wands, swords and pentacles, and then I've got a column at the end for major arcana if I pull one. And then basically I just have the dates down the side, and then I just use my colours, so I know that this was a wands and then it was a 6 of wands. So pentacles, 9 of pentacles, pentacles, 3 of pentacles, 4 of pentacles, 5 of pentacles, 6 of pentacles, 7 of pentacles, 8 of pentacles, 9 of pentacles, 10 of pentacles, 11 of pentacles, 12 of pentacles, 13 of pentacles, 14 of pentacles, 15 of pentacles, 16 of pentacles, 17 of pentacles, 18 of pentacles, 19 of pentacles, 20 of pentacles, 21 of pentacles, 22 of pentacles, 23 of pentacles, 24 of pentacles, 25 of pentacles, 26 of pentacles, 27 of pentacles, 28 of pentacles, 29 of pentacles, 30 of pentacles, 31 of pentacles, 32 of pentacles, 33 of pentacles, 34 of pentacles, 35 of pentacles, 36 of pentacles, 37 of pentacles, 38 of pentacles, 39 of pentacles, 40 of pentacles, 41 of pentacles, 42 of pentacles, 43 of pentacles, 44 of pentacles, 45 of pentacles, 46 of pentacles, 47 of Ace of Pentacles, and Cups, Two of Cups. This is just to basically see how many times I draw these cards. And then what you can also do, either in this book or in your diary, or for example, you can just write that down and then write the card down and how it relates to your day. I would recommend doing that, but this is the minimum of what I would recommend. My biggest recommendation is to do this, and also to write down a daily interpretation of the card in relation to your day or in relation to your question. I would do this for a couple of months at least. I'd still do this every day years later, but I would recommend doing this at least once a day for at least a couple of months, 3 to 4 months as a minimum. And then you can move on to larger reads. And when you have learned to interpret the cards yourself, read about other people's interpretations, and you have also drawn a daily card for a while, what you can now do is move on to larger tarot reads. I wouldn't recommend doing any larger tarot reads. I wouldn't recommend larger than 3 when you first start out, because when you start to do a larger tarot read, you need to not only be able to interpret the cards on their own, but in relation to every other card in the read. So unless you can do that straight off the bat, if you can, then, you know, kudos to you. I couldn't. But once you have started to progress and started to interpret the cards a little more intuitively, what you can then do is move on to larger reads. And when you want to start doing that, what I would recommend doing is getting yourself a book of spreads. It's all very well and good finding tarot spreads online, but often what they do is just give you the spread and then leave you to it. But what you need when you are starting out is a book that's going to give you the spreads and also give you a little bit of information on how to interpret the cards in the spread together. For that, this is the book that I bought. This is rather an old book, as far as I know. I think I even bought it second hand on eBay. It was first published in 1997, so that tells you how old it is. But I would recommend a book like this. So this is the Complete Book of Tarot Spreads by Evelyn Berger and Johannes Fiebig. It gives you 122 layouts. It also gives you a little bit of information about tarot and what kinds of questions to ask, how to interpret cards together, separately. It also gives you a few tips on what to do before you start to read tarot, before you actually start to do the physical tarot spread. And then it gives you all the different, like I said, there's 122 spreads in this book. I can't say that I've used all 122 of them, but what it does do is give you, so for instance, the card of the day, which is what I recommend everybody does. It then gives you some information on basically how to use this card of the day, how to interpret it in terms of the rest of your day. And it does that for most of the tarot reads. So for instance, the cross, and it gives you just a paragraph, but a paragraph is enough. It gives you basically a kind of overview of what the spread is used for. So here it doesn't just say, you know, S in the middle is the significant theme. So, you know, it tells you why and what this card is used for, essentially. So that's what you want when you start to do larger tarot spreads. I recommend that you get a book that doesn't just give you tarot spreads, doesn't just give you more information about the individual tarot cards, but gives you information on how to interpret cards within a spread, because that's really important, and it's not always given to you when you find a spread on Pinterest, for example. So buy yourself a book like this. Now, once you have done all of your reading and done all your research, and when I say all of your research, I don't mean once you've read one book you're done. I still, to this day, will read and research tarot, even though I do it every day, and even though I've been doing it for years. I do not think that you can ever stop learning about tarot. I think tarot evolves and grows with you, and evolves and grows with life in general. But once you have gotten to grips with interpretations and how to read and blah blah blah, you could perhaps then start to read for yourself or read for others. The only thing that I would tell you is when you first start to read for others, try to be as objective as possible. It's very easy when you start to read for others. It might be like your best friend or your mum or a sister or a brother or a work colleague. Try to be as objective as possible. So when you start to do a spread, I would say turn it into a kind of ritual. So with that being said, I thought I would show you what I do every time I do a tarot read for someone else. For myself, I tend not to make it quite as much of a ritual, but for other people, I tend to turn it into more of a ritual. So I thought I would show you what I do. So first things first, I will almost always light some candles. These are just for atmosphere and for effect. I also use them to meditate, so I will stare into the flame essentially and meditate and visualize using the candle flame. I would also then recommend that you light some incense. This is some incense that I bought myself the other day. So this is tribal soul incense in white copal. I just think packaging's absolutely adorable. So there's no plastic in any of this packaging. It's all paper packaging. It's why I've decided to start buying this instead of other types of incense that come in like plastic bags. But I would recommend burning some incense. And then, because crystals are my thing, I will always have some crystals on my tarot mat. Again, if you have ever bought a tarot read from me, you have probably seen one or other of these bad boys in the photo that I send, because I send a photo with every read. So what I do is, depending on what question is or the read that they want me to do, I will pick some crystals. So if, for instance, somebody was wanting me to do a love read for them, I would obviously pick a rose quartz, and then I might pick a clear quartz, and then I might pick an amethyst, and I will use these crystals because they kind of represent the energies and the feelings that I'm wanting to feel. I'm wanting to tune into the energy of the person that is buying the read from me. I want to be able to visualize their energy, so I use names, date of birth, and also address because it's available to me on Etsy. And I will use these crystals while I visualize, while I meditate, to connect with that energy. I then lay those crystals out as so. So say this person has bought a 3-card read from me. So now I've got my candles, I've got my incense, and I've got my crystals. I will then take the cards. I will use the incense that I've lit to cleanse the cards slightly. I don't use white sage for this. I always use a different kind of incense because I don't want to completely clear the energies from the deck. I just want to cleanse the energies of the read that I've done before, basically. So once I've done that, I give them a really, really good shuffle while visualising the energies, while visualising the person, while visualising their question, and doing what I need to do. And this can take me up to 15 minutes sometimes. And then I will draw the cards. So let's pretend that I've shuffled my cards. So the 3-card love read that I do is you and your feelings, them and their feelings, and the future of the relationship. So I will pull my 3 cards. So we've got Judgment, we've got the 4 of Pentacles, and we've got the Hermit. So if this was a you, them, and the future, I would say Judgment. This is someone who is very judgmental, possibly. They might have a distinct opinion of justice and right and wrong, and they may basically be judging every aspect of that relationship and every aspect of their partner. And then we've got the Four of Pentacles, and I would say that this person is probably a little bit stingy. They might not be very open with their feelings, or, because this is Pentacles, open with their money. And then the Future is the Hermit, so this is all about introspection and thinking internally and thinking about, you know, basically like what do you really want. So I would then write that up, probably as a 2 to 3 page read, and interpret them all together. But this is the ritual that I go through every time I do a tarot read, and it's the ritual that I would say you need to be doing for yourself at first and for others when it really comes down to it. So yeah, they are the things that I do when I read, and I hope that my tips and guidance for tarot have even been remotely helpful. So yeah, let me know in the comments, and if it has been helpful, I'll do other videos like this.